welcome everyone. I hope you're good for another presentation for the next 20 minutes. You see also my voice getting down a bit. My name is Gunkel. I'm working for a company called Skyline Communications. For those who don't know Skyline, you probably have heard about our product, which is data miner, in essence we call it nowadays, it really takes long, a digital transformation platform. It's really something to manage and orchestrate a media organization. But going to the presentation of today, I want to pick up what Dirk has presented, a really nice example of how you can embrace IP technologies and how you can use the flexibility. I guess that's one of the key aspects why people move away from SDI to IP, and it's proven technology. But why is it not always that simple? Because everybody could just go, yeah, let's go IP and that's it. We are all good in media. We know how to run real-time operations. We have done that for 30, 40 years or longer. And now we are in a world where media is becoming IT and more software driven. But at the same time, we know it's not plain vanilla IT. Is not something that we can manage through an IT company. It's a pretty specific world. That's interesting. Sorry, I got distracted. Same for you. Little stop. I know. I have my challenge here. Going into the ICT world, we are in a very specific small niche. It's not plain vanilla IT, ICT. And we need to live and embrace those principles. And that's always something I'm talking about, to become much more data-driven, to run, and you've heard about those DevOps principles. You need to run CI/CD platforms to really become a more IT-centric company. In the lack of having the right word, we came up with something, we call it media operations. And that's really to simplify, to be more automated, and to be much more data-driven than before, to manage all this, which was in the past an SDI infrastructure, but now becomes IT. 1, 2, 3. I try again. Okay. What are the requirements to go there? When we look into things you do on a daily basis, we always say everything you do has somehow a life cycle. That starts with running the inventory, planning and reserving your equipment. Then what Dirk was talking about, deploying it, configuring it, running it, controlling it, monitoring it, things we have done also with SDI. You need to decommission equipment again. That's something we have not necessarily done in the past all the time. And then at the very end, there is also a bill and procurement. And that involves multiple teams. And those teams today, when you think about your organization, we work in a pretty analog way. We have digitized technology, but we have not digitized our workflows. You hand over paper from one team to another. Scheduling team has a PDF, gives it to the MCR people. That's not pretty efficient and not digital yet. What else do we see? Need to click faster. It's about the integration with different technologies. We have seen one example just now. Different formats, different vendors, all needs to go together, not necessarily today. When we talk about cloud-based equipment, especially, things can talk to each other. You have still those barriers, but you need a platform that can interface with each technology, each API. The days of SNMP, those are gone. Now we have a lot more different ways to interact and to integrate products. And you need some technology that supports this. So different infrastructure. And next to multiple teams, multiple different infrastructures you come across, you need to digitize everything. That really, again, starts from onboarding inventory. In the past, you just turned the camera on, that was it. Nowadays, onboarding is a critical process. Think about security. You have a lot of security breaches just because people onboard devices not in the way they should do it. Planning, reserving, that needs to be digitized. And that includes infrastructure, that includes people, that includes rooms, that includes your facility, everything you need. You do it in a pretty manual day today, probably. And then something we also didn't have in the past is deployment. Deployment of infrastructure to me means much more that you need to spin things up. You need to run the Lavo system on the stack of the Dell servers. That includes Docker systems, virtual machines, everything you need to do one after the other to have something running. And that you need to plan. Otherwise, because this is not done in just a second or 5 seconds, you will not be ready for the show. Then again, what we see here, configuration, connectivity, that's pretty much what we are familiar with. Decommissioning things, finishing your event, costing and billing, when you digitize workflows, that needs to also use the same data you need to transfer from one team to another, from one step in the life cycle of everything you do to another one. So it's really about digitizing those workflows, what we always talk about, not only using digital technology. Once more, my 2 seconds, or 3 or 5. With the time in mind, I don't want to talk about each and every step and what we do. I want to talk a little bit about the deployment process. What we see, and we put it into 2 different buckets. You have those software media functions you were just talking about. Those can run on commercial off-the-shelf hardware. They can run in the cloud. They are cloud native. You can scale the way you want. You can easily migrate them from just any place, from on-prem to the cloud and backwards, and leverage existing IT technology and tools. But at the same time, you also see those multi-purpose platforms, I call them, often FPGA-based, but they are also dynamic in a way that one day you can run it as a multi-viewer, the other day it's a JPEG XS encoder, and then you deploy a new FPGA firmware, and you make it an ST2110 to SDI converter. So that platform you can use in a similar way that you use it here. You have those flexibility with the platforms. But you need to manage those and automate those processes. Otherwise, that deployment process probably takes forever when you do it in a manual way. Not sure, Dirk, how long did it take for deploying the Lavo platform for such an event? If that's a valid question.
Yeah, so we
just came to my mind.
Yeah, I'll come back. I'm not going to steal your time. So
okay,
I'll come back in the end.
Maybe a longer answer. Yeah. But it's not done in a day, I guess. When we talk about deployment that goes together with planning and reserving, I want to bring up one point. You need to reserve the infrastructure that you need for the next event. And what is that? We talk about resources often. And what are resources? I want to bring it up for one reason. It's not necessarily the physical box anymore. A resource is what I always say, like the smallest piece you can use independent of each other. You want to book something, you want to use it, you don't want to book the full box. If you have a camera, an asset, well, you use the full camera, you don't use parts of it. If you have multi-channel video server, as another simple example, you don't want to book the EVS server, the 4RU units for the event. You want to book a single channel, in or out or bidirectional. When you think about a network, you don't book the switch, you book an individual network port or an interface, maybe ingress and egress, because you need to book capacity. So that's something when you think about managing and automating those workflows and deploying and before reserving resources and your assets, you need to split up your assets into those resources. The same thing happens again.
But slowly.
That's a critical step when we digitize those workflows to say, really, you need to break down the assets into resources, virtual functions. If you talk about a microservice-based system, you have them already. This is like the smallest piece you want to use. If you use microservices, all good. But in reality, we have a lot of those assets still around, and you still need to split them. And then just a few thoughts. When you deploy something like what you have seen with Lavo, you do it for one event, takes multiple weeks to prepare, you decommission it again. Further down the road, and you have probably seen that white paper from EVU about dynamic media facility, you want to do this per production, very dynamic, not only for one big event where you have enough time and enough money in there. In an ideal world, you do it like every single day, multiple times. Manage your resources in a very much and more dynamic way. And again, automation is key for that. But just a few things why it's not as easy as some of our customers sometimes think, because there are a lot of dependencies in it. First of all, the resources, and it's very important, they don't exist at the time when you book them. A lot of people, they work with traditional booking systems where you have a list of resources. You say I have 20 encoders, 20 cameras, 100 of those. That's it. But you can't work with this anymore because it's not fixed. You don't know what you have at the time when you book it because it doesn't exist. So you need to think about it a little bit. Same for the underlying compute. You cannot just say, I need 500 encoders. I need to see if I have enough compute. And depending on the encoder configuration, SDR, HDR, it might use more or less compute. It's not super easy to predict how much compute it needs. Licensing, a big topic, more important. even if you have enough compute, even if everything is good, you might not have enough licenses. Do you have a central licensing server? Do we need to manage the licenses? Is it fixed? Is it very dynamic? Just consider it when you plan for those dynamic resources. And then also when you be out of the planning process, when you change things dynamically here, you have more inputs, more outputs in different formats. It has an impact on your VSM system, on the control system, because all of a sudden you have signals that haven't been there before, that have changed the format, they're not compatible anymore. That needs to adapt as well, that layer. It cannot be a fixed layer anymore. And last but not least, network capacity. Don't underestimate that. If you are in a non-blocking environment between facilities, if you add a lot of flexibility here, think about your network not to run out of bandwidth. So there's always impact when you try to be dynamic here on every single step afterwards. And when we talk to customers, and we have deployed a couple of projects, US customers, the large ones, they do pretty well in that, you need to start small. It doesn't make sense to do everything in one, try something out, qualify. This is what Lavo has also done. This Dell server runs exactly in a good way with this and this and this configuration. That's good enough. And later on, we do the next step, but not all in one. So dynamic resource management, key piece to automate those workflows. And then just one slide here. I love to talk about automation orchestration. A lot of confusion in the market. What I always say, orchestration is more than automation, more than scheduling, and more than control. A lot of people, they say, I buy an orchestrator, and actually they mean I need an IP signal switching engine, or whatever word you want to give it. When we say orchestration, we mean a framework. And the framework to automate the life cycle of something you do in your facility. That's for us when we talk about orchestration. It's much more using automation, using scheduling, and using control. Altogether, it's a framework, and very important here, that manages and tracks resources. Without that, you will be pretty much lost. And when you talk about resources, we need to keep in mind, and that needs a database underneath, the availability of resources. When I book resources, are they available? Yes or no? They're not available because I use them for my next event, but they're also not available because somebody has to do plant maintenance. That's the IT team. They need to use the same data structure, same database. Historically, I guess you did probably 1 or 2 updates maybe per year or out of season. Now when Cisco Arista tells you there is a security breach, naming any names here probably, any company coming up, you are forced to do an update now, not because you get new features. It's mostly about security lags companies have found. And you are really forced to do that right in the middle of a production. So planned maintenance, slots, which reduces availability of resources, you will see those more and more. So keeping track of the availability, capabilities, you need to know what the device can do because it's so flexible. When you run the Lavo example you just presented, you can do just everything. And you need to somewhere track it, what is capable, to be able to say, yes, I can do this or this or this. I have the license, I have the compute. And last but not least, capacity. This is mostly when we talk about network. And then we have an orchestration stack. And how to do that, talking a lot about what we need, I guess we need a flexible stack. We don't talk about products anymore, no matter if you go with data miner, our solution, or with anything different. You need a bit of a flexible stack that allows you to build things step by step, because you cannot achieve everything on day one. And in our case, a stack looks like that you have a data collection control plane interfacing with all your infrastructure. You take a copy of that, basically. You need to add administrative data. That's key nowadays. You need to loop in the schedules to know when do I need my infrastructure. Then you need a visualization layer. We call it data consumption. That's also more and more important to have the right user interface to simplify operations. As you said, Dirk, again, your example, the operators, they don't like complexity. They cannot handle that complexity because they are stressed out just running the show. You cannot tell them how to run and stop a Docker container. It needs to be as simple as possible. And then in the middle, this is key. You need tons of functions to run your automation, to run your workflows, to automate your workflows. This is not something which comes out of the box, because every operator, every broadcaster, every event is different, and you need to adapt. And this is work that needs to be done step by step. Start somewhere, have the right data in place, then start automating, do something good with the data and visualize it in a way that people can still manage it. And what we have, we call it much more a framework. It's not a product, because there is no single product out there that does the job, and you always have to adapt. And adapting means you need to do it in a more agile way. What we have done, and that started during COVID, we opened just everything to our customers. We don't want to provide the services anymore for you, like a classic SI or a vendor. It's best when you learn how to do it on your own, because you're inside, you know what the workflow is. You're like your best agile team ever, because if you tell me to do it, there will be misunderstandings. We do multiple iterations. It just takes too long. And the bigger the groups are, the more chaos you produce. So no more waterfall projects. And when you go agile, you also need to have something modular in place that allows you to play with your data and to use the data in the way you want it. One approach we also did, because in the past, and that's, I guess, the case for many stacks or platforms, you had to be a developer to get something done. We see this a lot in the IT industry. It's called the democratization of software. You can now use AI to produce code. When I asked ChatGPT, I learned C# maybe 20 years back. I still get some code out, so that helps me already. Same for the user interfaces. I don't have to be an HTML expert anymore. We came up with, and we are not the only ones, a concept of low-code applications, which is a graphical user interface where you can use your real-time data, put together the building blocks you need, be it a routing panel or a scheduler, because I'm a different team, or somebody looking into the network. They all look at the same data, but from a different angle. So we're moving away from those one user interfaces or one software does it all, where you need training for 100 days before you can use it. Here we have small little pieces where you only get what you need for the next job. And again, those low-code applications, we often start building like a POC, a little MVP with the customers, and then they can edit this on their own, and then they can evolve on their own. Important concept to be successful in those more agile projects. Those are just a couple of screenshots. You probably can't see it much, but it's a graphical user interface. Key is always, you start with something, you start editing, it's graphical, you fine-tune, you publish again, you start operating, and we embrace also here those CI/CD workflows or DevOps workflows to say, I run it, I test it, I play with it, I publish it again. If I like it, it's good. If I don't like it, I can go back immediately. The undo function, which was it called in the past, that's key to have it. Otherwise, you are in big trouble when you do something wrong. And here, it's a good thing people really try it out. They fail. We say fail fast, then go back, and then you move on operating. And this is something the operators do. It's not engineering anymore. What does it mean? We need to educate operators. And they need to embrace a bit new workflows, and they need to be willing to learn. Certainly when it comes to the core software, more complex automation scripts to run a complete production with a single click, there is still coding involved at some point in time. This is something the engineering teams do. What we did there, as a company, we set up our own CI/CD platform. Everything we do internally is completely automated when we do coding, same for many other companies. But we also open that code repository in Git, in GitHub, to our customers. Big companies like NBC or Sky, to name a few, they use our CI/CD platform, or they even have their own one to do the very same thing. They code something, and instead of coding something and put it on the lab system and manually then copying it on the production system, it needs to be automated. So I talked a little bit about automation of the workflow, but automating testing may be even more important, because when you don't automate the testing and the changes you want to embrace in your system, you are stuck again. Because then it takes forever when you do a manual change. People don't know if things will break. If you only try it out on the production system, you need a proper lab system. And you need to use those ICT technologies, like a CI/CD platform, to test things out. And those are just, to wrap it up, a couple of example screenshots of those low-code applications for different teams to run something in your MCR, to run a production, it always starts with building resources. It's again a graphical interface. Don't look into the details, just to give examples, where an operator or an engineer in a company can build his resources. I talk about assets, then you need to think about how do I split my asset into virtual functions, do it on the user interface, and then you say, with another click, it's ready, I can use it, I can start booking it. And you connect it to the real device in that stack we were talking about. Then there are other applications. What can I book? What are the workflows I'm allowed to do in my MCR? I can do JPEG XS contribution. I can do a satellite uplink downlink. I can run a production in my studio. Those workflows need to be predefined. Again, graphical interface to say which are the resources from resource pools I can use, what can I book, and give those workflows, once I have designed those, to the operations. When they book something, they have a list of predefined templates to say I can do this and this and this and this, and the system knows what to book and how to connect it. This is again just a small subset of the data we have in the data lake, if you want so, to fulfill your role, defining what you can do in your operations. Scheduling teams, they work again with the same data. You need a scheduling overview. You want to say tomorrow from 10 to 12, I want to do this. I use a template. And from them onwards, you don't want to take care much anymore. And the automation kicks in, spins up, deploys your resources, connects them, monitors them, and runs and automates that life cycle. And lastly, and we are almost back, ad hoc operations doesn't go away. You still have the people. Not everything can be fully automated. They just do things on the fly. You change parameters. You need to loop in and splice in an audio delay processor engine because you couldn't plan up front. Certainly, you need user interfaces for that one. Use existing ones, build your own ones again. And all together, this is always important. It's not only about technology, what we are talking here. You need to pick the right technology. This is the foundation. It needs to be open. It needs to be flexible, data-driven, things we have seen. But also give time to the teams, to the end customer to learn this technology. Something we tell during every single project, it's not us offering 200 days of engineering services. We better offer 50 only and spend 100 days to educate the team. And then they can move on. We really need to move away from those waterfall projects and turnkey projects. Agile methodologies, this is key. And empower your people, give them the right tools. I cannot expect everybody to be a developer and learn C# in our case. Give them those low-code applications. Give them things where they have a realistic chance to learn and to be motivated to really use that technology. We see companies, they focus on technology only. They're pretty much stuck after a while because they just changed technology. They didn't look into the workflows. They didn't bring the operators on board. Those are not the most successful projects, but when you really onboard the people, give them time, and that's an investment you need to look into, then those transitions to IB, I guess they can be really successful, and we see it with successful projects out there nowadays. It's not just that we talk about theory, it happens right now.